Welcome to Tribe Talk. You're here with Rachel Evans
and Laura Neal,
and today we're going to be talking about the impact that trauma has on emotional development.
Have you ever experienced a small problem turning into a huge emotional outburst for your child or a child that you support? This is what we hear so often from so many parents and carers, that tiny things will turn into something huge in this huge outburst. But why is it?
So in today's episode, we will be telling you why this happens and giving you the answers that you've been looking for.
So probably one of the most frequent things we encounter is children who have big emotional outbursts, and this can be young children, but it can also be our teenagers or our young people who are approaching adulthood or have just gone into adulthood as well. It's something we're asked to support with more often than anything else. It's those emotional outbursts, whether it might be tantrums, it could be throwing items, it could be a young person who goes from 0 to 100 within a few seconds. And parents, carers, those support him want help with that. They don't know what to do. And for us, when we're approached with those types of questions on what do we do in these situations, there's a couple of things we look at. So one is the environment, like what's going on in the environment at the time. But the second one is really looking at what's the child's emotional understanding like, because what we've learned over years and years of practice is if their emotional understanding isn't there, we have absolutely no chance of reducing these emotional outbursts.
No, because that is the first step, isn't it? To regulating emotions.
Yeah. So when we talk about emotional understanding, we're actually talking about 3 different levels of emotional understanding. The first level is emotional literacy. So do they understand their emotions? Are they able to label them? Do they know what they look like? The second level then is emotional awareness. So how do those emotions feel for them? Can they interpret how they feel when they crop up? Also, what's their awareness of other people's emotions like? Are they able to recognize when other people are feeling certain ways? Are they able to recognize when people are distressed or happy? So we're really looking at that overall awareness, not just for the child themselves, but how they can perceive others' emotions as well. And then the third level then is emotional regulation. So if we've got the emotional literacy, if they are literate in terms of their emotions, if they're able to then be aware of them, then we can start working on regulation. Without that awareness and that literacy, we're never even going to get to that regulation point.
Yeah. And like you said there, Laura, there's prerequisite or foundational skills that are needed, and before we get to regulation. So you've got those 3 things: emotional literacy, emotional awareness, and emotional regulation. And it's important that we understand and we know that a child is able to be able to be emotional literate before they're able to have some awareness and then being able to regulate, because regulation otherwise is just going to be an impossible task for them if they haven't got those core skills. So like you said, with the children that we support, and over the years of supporting children, we know that their emotional development is impacted. And I know we've spoken about this on other podcasts, but that comes from developmental trauma that they've experienced, and how that's impacted some of their skills being developed. So and emotions comes into that. So a child that hasn't had the opportunity or been shown to regulate their emotions, or we're not labeling emotions, they don't understand what someone else is feeling, all that comes into how their trauma has impacted and how they interpret and manage their emotions. And it's that disconnect there, isn't it, between that?
Yeah, and this always takes me back to thinking about the things that I did with my children when they were really young. So for many of us, we've all had those like really early learning books. So The Happy Lion or The Sad Snake, and you're talking about emotions as you're reading those little books to your children. But many of our children have missed out on those types of things. So the things that come naturally to us, like saying, oh, I'm happy today, or I'm feeling really sad, or how are you feeling, they've missed out on those experiences. And many of the children that we support, we found, can't even label those emotions accurately when we assess and we break that down. And this is really what developmental trauma is all about. It's those missed experiences that then mean that a child gets to a certain age and they can't do those things. They don't have those emotional skills because of those missed experiences.
Yeah, you said something there, Laura, that took me back to a child that I was supporting. You were talking about how those delays, like emotional delays, present, and I remember working with a young lad, and when we talked about emotions in the therapy room, even just expressing an emotion, it all looked the same. So it was, you know, show me happy, it was a straight smile. Show me sad, straight smile. Show me worried, straight smile. And it was really stark to me and really highlighted at what level this young lad was at in terms of his emotional understanding, because he didn't understand how each emotion should present on his face, like his facial expressions, and weren't picking up on that. And that case still really sticks out to me whilst working with that child.
So what you're talking about there is actually a couple of things as well. So you're probably talking about emotional literacy. So he wasn't literate in his emotions because he couldn't tell the difference between them. He didn't know what they looked like, couldn't label them. But then also awareness, because if a child thinks that a straight smile is sadness, happiness, how can you interpret somebody else's emotions? How do you know how you're feeling if you haven't made those differentiations? And even asking him to imitate some of those facial expressions was quite difficult. And like I said, it just plots then in terms of his emotional understanding where he was at in terms of what skill level. But yeah, I think it's important for parents and carers to be considering a child's trauma history and how they're presenting in terms of their emotional understanding, what is their skill level, and what support that they need, because this can look very differently. It can present very differently for children, and in terms of the behaviours that they're displaying, because emotions, we can't see them. So what parents and carers see, and professionals, so let's just put school in the mix, what they see is very different, and then we're interpreting how emotions come into that. So day-to-day life for a child that is having difficulties in understanding or regulating some of their emotions, parents, carers, school see these big outbursts, don't they? So there's increases in physical aggression, there might be verbal aggression, they might be withdrawing or shutting down, don't want a lot of interaction, don't know how to seek that support when they're feeling certain things. So like I said, there's so many different ways that this can present for children that are unable to understand their emotions. And I think something we need to remember is for many of our children, those emotions are just all mixed up. So we'll see anger when they're actually feeling sadness, but they can't recognise that it's sadness. Or they might be feeling worry or anxiety, but it comes out as anger because when they can't identify it, they can't label it, and they don't know what to do with it.
It's like you were talking about with awareness. What is the child's body tell those physiological responses? What's happening internally that saying I feel this particular emotion.
Yeah.
And the easiest one I think to talk about is when a child's worried, or when we feel worry, because we sometimes, you know, feel that churning in our stomach, or like the tightness in our chest, and it's labelling what that really feels and looks like for a child when they're experiencing some of those emotions.
Yeah, and remembering, because this is so we've done a little bit of background research in this area as well to develop our program called Developing Emotional Understanding, and that was really interesting to me when we were doing that, because there are facial expressions that we all pull that express our emotions that are universal across all cultures. So they can be identified across all cultures. If you pull a certain facial expression, other people should be able to recognize that, and you will feel a certain way in your body.
Yeah.
But there are other things that go on in our bodies that are not universal and are completely unique and different across everybody. So you just said when you were feeling worried, you might feel churning in your stomach.
Yeah.
Now for me, that presents differently. So I might feel that in my chest, more here. And again, that's something we need to remember, because for our children, it might feel different. So it's not helping them to recognize a universal thing. It's helping them to recognize how that feels for them and what that means for them.
Yes, and especially like those internal feelings. Because that could feel so different for children, and what they're experiencing. But what is important is that they know what that feeling is, and they're able to label what that is for them.
Yeah.
Oh, I might be feeling a little bit worried, or my heart is racing really fast and I might be excited right now, or I might be really angry. So yes, it's being able to like label what that is for them, and then understanding what
and link it up with what it means.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that moves us nicely on to what do parents and carers do about this, because we know this is a problem that many children who've experienced trauma encounter. So what can parents and carers do to help?
Yeah, and you've already touched on one really, and it goes back to those early childhood experiences when you're spending time with a little one, and you're talking about emotions and you're labelling emotions. So you're seeing a child cry, you're experiencing sadness, or you look sad, you look really sad, come and have a sit on my lap and have a cut with mum, you know. But it's being able to label those emotions, but also not just with the child, but also labelling emotions in the house as well, isn't it? So I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad, and that's something that we encourage in every household, isn't it? When we're supporting families, is that don't allow emotions or talking about emotions be a taboo topic. Talk about them. It's more teaching opportunities and experiences for a child to then be picking up. Oh, that's another model of, you know, my mum is smiling, or my foster carer is smiling, that means that she's happy. There's just more models of what that looks like.
And don't completely avoid negative emotions either. So I think as adults, particularly when we know a child has experienced trauma and they've had really difficult times, we can avoid talking about those times when we feel sad or upset or worried or anxious. And it's not to say we should be sharing everything with our children, because we should not, but to say, oh, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this event that's coming up, or I'm feeling a little bit sad today because I'm missing this person. Those conversations are okay. We don't want to let them into our world of anxiety that we have as adults, but what we do want to do is highlight those everyday normal experiences to show that we feel them as well.
And sharing those emotions, because you're immediately modelling then that the problem shared's the problem half type of thing. If we're bringing emotions into the topic of conversation. You're just showing your child that you reach out to support if you need to talk to somebody about something that you're feeling, and you're that person to them that you can go to. They can go to their parent or their carer and they can talk about those emotions. Like, it's a safe and trusted space. And I can support you through that. You don't have to experience that or and confuse that emotion all by yourself, and then it escalates into something that's unpleasant.
So definitely we would recommend labelling emotions, talking about emotions day to day. I think another really good thing to do, particularly if you have children who might not be as young as you'd hope, but as you'd hope where they would be doing these things, but are still quite young, is revisiting some of those books that are for little ones. We've definitely supported children who are like 8, 9, 10, 11, and they've really valued going back and just looking through some of those books that are for younger children and learning about emotions that way. There are some books for older children as well that can help them really start to identify emotions. So definitely using books and storytelling is really good.
You want to be finding lots of natural opportunities for teaching, don't you? And where you can be teaching emotions in the moment, really. So it seems more natural. When you're talking about emotions, the conversation, the teaching is very natural.
And then a great movie is Inside Out, of course.
We've got the characters.
And that's that is a really great movie, and adults love it. It's applicable for all ages, so you could use that movie for all children to help them start to identify basic emotions. And the first movie in particular is based on the basic emotions that are universal and everybody should know. So that's a really good movie to really start off that emotional development.
In our training we always talk about that movie. It's very well done.
It is very well done.
Really describing what these emotions feel and look like, and how our children experience that is really clever. Another thing as well that we also recommend, especially after there might be an incident that happens where behaviours have presented, more challenging behaviours have presented, and we've managed that situation, we've helped the child to calm down. But after the fact, when we're focusing on repairing our relationship with that child and debriefing almost that incident, talking about those emotions and labelling them. I know we're going back to emotional labelling, but you can do that through repair as well. Where you're debriefing what that incident looked like, and I can see you were really frustrated when I told you couldn't have something. I could see you were really angry because you went red in the face, you started shouting, so you started to label all those behaviours that are associated with that emotion for that child. But you'll have moments where you're repairing and debriefing where absolutely bring more emotions to the conversation.
And showing that repair is so important as well, because often that's something that our children have missed out on as well. So showing that we can repair and this is how we do it, and yes, I did feel unhappy or upset and you felt frustrated, unhappy and upset, but we can repair from that together. And also we can be coaching and teaching our children through different coping strategies when we do feel those negative emotions, and that, any age, isn't it, whatever's age appropriate. So a teenager that might be feeling worried, they could journal that or write that down. A younger child that might be feeling angry, teaching them some breathing techniques. There's lots of different coping strategies that you can be teaching children of all ages if they're, when they do experience those negative emotions, because we have those subtle coping strategies as adults. When I feel a little bit anxious and I'm feeling that tightness in my chest, I will find myself taking those deeper breaths, or like those inhales and a longer exhale.
to help support. So we can teach our children strategies like that.
And there's a lot of talk around co-regulation with children who've experienced trauma, and I think something that's often missed with co-regulation is great, and it's something that for the majority of children is done from a very young age. You have that from birth, you do that with your primary carer, so you learn that gradually and you learn it by copying and modelling. But for many of our children who've missed out on those experiences, they find it much harder to learn by copying and modelling, so you have to walk them through it, particularly if they're verbal. So it might be verbally walking them through it, it might be modelling that for them but describing what you're doing at the same time, and that co-regulation becomes more in depth than it would have been if you're doing that with a baby and they're learning from birth. And particularly with our teenagers, we found this, that we have to walk them through it, we have to break it down, we have to describe, we have to show them exactly what we're doing and tell them exactly what we're doing for them to be able to co-regulate with us.
Yeah, because that comes back to the impact trauma has on emotional development, and those missed learning experiences where co-regulation might not have happened. They haven't learned how to even do that. So skills such as being able to imitate and being able to model certain things just becomes really difficult because they haven't learned how to even imitate. Like going back to that example that I shared of that young lad not able to imitate facial expression. That's where we had to start.
So you just showing, that's a really good example, Rachel, because you can show that facial expression as much as you want. If he doesn't know he's got to imitate it, he's not going to. And that's where the more in-depth coaching comes in, where I don't know what you did in that situation, but if I was in that situation, I might have a mirror, I might get him to practice, and then get him to copy me. And so you're doing lots of practicing, because if you just expect that to develop through co-regulating, it's not going to.
No. And that's actually what I'm doing with my little boy, where we look in the mirror and I'm saying, look at mommy, I'm smiling, I'm doing this, and I'm showing him, like teaching him how to smile through imitation using a mirror. And to put into context, he's 20 months, so it's taking it back to that level and providing more of those experiences that they might not have had in terms of being able to learn some of these things. And
you're talking much more guided learning, and you're really guiding them through that learning experience. So lots of examples there on how you can support your children with emotional development, and definitely everything that we talked about today, we'd recommend foster carers, adoptive parents, practitioners, they're using this as standard really with any child who's experienced trauma, because we're seeing that it's needed so often, and if you're doing it, then great, that can only be a support.
So we've talked a lot about emotional understanding and what that looks like, but a question that parents and carers often ask us is if and when my child may need therapy in terms of being able to support their emotional understanding.
Good question. I think my response to this question is always fairly similar, that if at home, if you're doing the emotional labelling, if you are talking about emotions, if you're reflecting with your child and you're still not seeing much of a difference, then that is an indication to me that there might be some therapy that's needed. And with emotional understanding, we'd always start off with an assessment, and within our assessments what we're looking at is those three different levels that I talked about. So first off, emotional literacy. How literate is this child with their emotions? Can they label happy? Can they label sad? Can they label worried, scared, angry? Do they know what those are? We're then looking at awareness. So are they aware of those things happening for themselves and in their bodies, but also are they aware when they happen for other people? Are they able to recognize that? And then if we've covered those two areas and we can see that actually yes, they do have some skills in these areas, we're looking at regulation. And if the regulation isn't there but those other two areas are, where's the gap, where's the divide? Because that information lets us know where to target within therapy. So if you feel like everything we've talked about today, you're actually doing those at home already and you're still not seeing any improvements, that's the point where I would be asking the question, is some therapy needed here? Some children do need therapy to kind of get them over that hump of, I don't understand. Yeah. But therapy, when it comes to emotional understanding, is really developing, it's a learning experience. It's developing their knowledge of emotions. So it's not so much trauma processing, it's definitely developing their knowledge so that then they're able to put that knowledge into practice day to day.
Yeah, it's developing that skill, isn't it? And filling in the blanks almost.
Yeah.
Those missed experiences.
Which is why our therapy is called Developing Emotional Understanding, because that's exactly what it is. It is developing that understanding so they can go out and then use it in the world.
So that is the end of our episode today. So key takeaways really, we've spoken about emotional understanding, and it's likely that for children who are care experience trauma, that their emotional development will be impacted in some way, and then that makes emotional and behavioural outbursts more likely to happen. But we've shared some strategies and some things that you can be doing at home which can support your child's emotional development.
Yeah. So if you found this helpful and you want to know more about trauma-informed care, subscribe to Tribe Talk for more trauma-informed care in practice.